How's it going, YouTube? This is yours truly, the Geek Live. Today on D&D Fridays, we'll be starting off a new series that we'll be having. We're going to be taking a deep dive into different character concepts and just taking a look at their progression throughout the levels and just taking a look at some of the major levels and the like and just figuring out maybe what that concept is really meant for, what they can do, and so on and so forth. But before we get to that, don't forget, hit the subscribe button down below, hit the notification button, and let us know down in the comments what you think of this particular character concept and what's your thoughts and process about it, and maybe some of the stuff that you would do if that was your character. Without further ado, let's get to it. So the character we have today is a rogue, and I'm thinking making this rogue an archer rogue. So this rogue is going to be primarily fighting at range, and thinking about maybe going into the usual trope of a rogue, maybe being a elf rogue, more specifically a high elf rogue. And what we're going to do is, I'm thinking for this rogue, I made it I made her known as Yosei Yundi, and kudos to anybody that might get that reference, as this is a interesting character concept that I got from watching Goblin Slayer, which is kind of like a anime version of D&D. Interesting show. I definitely recommend folks watching that. And who knows, you might see it on Anime Mondays.
Ah, little preview.
Yep. So just kicking off with the level one. So when it comes to high elf, you get a +2 to one stat and +1 to another stat, assuming that you're using the Tasha's rule set when it comes to that. So basically, I used point buy here, and that's how I'm able to get a 15 in dexterity, which made it a 17 with a +2. I started off my constitution with a 13, and I put my +1 there to get a 14. And then I was able to pretty much drop strength and then put 12s in the mental stats. Because I figured probably isn't going to be, this particular rogue isn't going to be needing strength too much. So 30-foot walking speed and +3 initiative. Uh, oh, middle of the road armor class with 14, not super great, but not super awful. So as for skills, picked up acrobatics, deception, nature, perception, persuasion, sleight of hand, and stealth, with expertise in stealth and perception, of course. Was what rogue is not going to expertise stealth?
I'm a little surprised that it's not expertise with sleight of hand also, since it's a rogue, but
I kind of feel like stealth is one of those skills with a rogue you want to expertise at level one, and then sleight of hand is usually good, but I feel like that could be either a level one or a level six expertise, depending on what's going on. But
that's
expertise in sleight of hand is usually very roguelike. So as an elf, we have advantage against being charmed. We can't be put to sleep magically. Um, in terms of what we get, decided to go with a couple of daggers for and a rapier just in case we need to melee, but and leather armor for armor. But our primary method of fighting is going to be at range, so you get the short bow or picked up the short bow. D6 plus Dex modifier, so that should be pretty good. And it's range, so it'll be giving us our sneak attack at every turn, pretty much. But more on that on how he gets sneak attack every turn later. Um, so that's pretty much it for level one. Not too much more. In terms of, since I'm a high elf, I get a wizard cantrip. Picked up Boom and Blade for now, but thinking Minor Illusion is probably a better choice since I'm a ranged fighter more so.
Mm.
But I feel like the wizard cantrip is up to the person playing this character and what they need it for. What's your thoughts on how everything is looking like for a level one rogue?
I mean, it's a level one rogue. It's got the stats that I would expect. Like I already mentioned, adding your expertise to perception instead of sleight of hand or acrobatics surprised me a little bit. But um, I think that depends on where you want to take this character, right? So in this case, if perception makes more sense for this build, then that's where it needs to go. But it seems like it's so far a fairly standard build so far.
Yep, and I'm glad you kind of brought up that expertise in perception. Um, the main reason why I chose expertise in perception as opposed to like acrobatics, sleight of hand, or what have you is I'm kind of building this to be kind of like that scout rogue type of character to go on ahead, like stealth up, try to figure out where things are. So I figured perception would probably be a good expertise early on.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Alright, so we're going to take a look at the just leveling up the rogue to level 3 now. And at level 3, we get our roguish archetype, which will be going with the scout. So let's take a look at what we benefit from going up to level 3. So yeah, still retain the decent HP and everything, but get a few features that we get now. So from on second level, we get our cunning action, which is always going to be good to disengage if we need to hide if we need to as a bonus action. Um, the main things though come from third level. So our expertise in nature and survival is going to be good for being that sort of scout type of character. But the main thing is so the two main things. First off, skirmisher, which you get from being a rogue or a scout rogue. Basically, when somebody ends their turn within 5 feet of us, we can use our reaction to move up to half of our movement speed without provoking opportunity attacks. So that's really good as a scout rogue, being more so the bow and arrow type of stuff. We really don't want to be in melee, so just being able to get out of melee and still have our cunning action to do something to get our advantage, I think is pretty good. The only issue with this is we're gonna have to keep up tabs with our reaction, as uncanny dodge, which we'll get in a few levels, is also a reaction. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yep.
And then also another thing is, so in Tasha's we get a new thing called where basically as a bonus action, if we don't move during our turn, we get our advantage on the next attack we make during that turn. So that's pretty much what we're going to be using our cunning action more or less for. So we can get that automatic sneak attack off on each turn, granted, as long as nobody gives us an instance of disadvantage. But
Of course.
with the exception of those rare instances, we're going to have advantage on all of our attacks, gaining sneak attack, which on this level is an extra 2d6.
Yeah, that's a nice little neat trick to be able to always have your sneak attack go off. That is the bread and butter, the backbone of playing a rogue is that sneak attack. And to your point about skirmisher, that is a great option to have as a reaction to be able to literally disengage when somebody ends their turn within 5 feet of you as a reaction, right? it saved it. I know it saved many a player's lives being able to do that.
And the cool thing about this interaction is this is technically somebody else's turn, so you can move even though you used up, even though you couldn't move on your turn. So that's a nice little neat combination there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So now let's take a look at what we get from being a level 6. So we get a few things. Um, so first up, once we get to level 4, we get an ASI, but this time we're actually going to choose a feat this round. And what we're going to choose is, as I'm sure most of y'all probably guessed it, Elven Accuracy. And basically, what this is going to do is we're going to get an 18 in our dexterity and basically triple advantage. Or double advantage, I guess I should say.
Still, either way.
And for our expertise, let's see what we should do. I'm thinking probably acrobatics, so we can go move from treetop to treetop or what have you. And I'm guessing maybe sleight of hand seems pretty good for this type of rogue.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at our report for level 6. So we have that 18 dex now. So we're basically going to be having a +7 to hit with our being that we have a +4 dexterity mod and a +3 proficiency. We're also going to basically, as stated earlier, we're going to almost always have advantage on our attack, so we're going to be rolling basically 3d20 +7 each attack with Elven Accuracy. So the odds are going to be really good that we're going to actually hit somebody. And getting off that sneak attack, which at this level is going to be an extra 3d6 points of damage that we're going to add on to our already 1d6 +4 damage with our short bow. At this point, it's probably starting to get likely that you might have some sort of like magic bow or +1 bow or something like that. So those numbers could even go up even farther depending on what your campaign is.
Yep.
And then the other big thing is on 5th level you get uncanny dodge, so another use for your reaction. So once per turn, you can use your reaction to have any attack that hits you that you can see. So you're more than likely going to be using either Uncanny Dodge or Skirmisher if you need to use your reaction, but only one of them per turn or per round, pretty much. So there may be times that you have to figure out, should you Uncanny Dodge or should you Skirmisher. And that's probably the biggest issue with this build that I can think of at the moment.
Sure, but having the ability to have an extra extra movement or cut your damage in half every turn, every round is really, really amazing. And it lets you balance that action economy that you have for your character, right? It lets you it gives you those choices that you can pick the one that's most optional in that moment.
Yeah, agreed. And then being that we are level 6 and we have so many expertise now, we're up to 6 skills that are expertised at the moment: acrobatics, nature, perception, sleight of hand, stealth, and survival, with 3 of those skills being in the double digits, which you don't find too often at this level.
Yeah.
So being the skill monkey that you are, it's going to be hard to fail most of these skills that you have expertise in, especially if they are dex-based skills.
Correct. Yeah, you basically, you almost can't fail, right? I know that there's a 1 in 20 chance technically, but +10 on even on a 2, right? A +10 gives you 12, right? Not great, but depending on the scenario, that's probably going to be plenty. If especially if it's uh, if it's some sort of deck save.
Exactly. Sometimes a 10 might be all that you need for the DC.
Yep, exactly.
And being that scout type of rogue, a plus 10 to your stealth and a plus 7 to your perception, you have a pretty good chance of actually sneaking around and seeing what's in the camp or whatever that you might be scouting out for the rest of your party.
Yep, exactly.
So with that, let's take a look at what a level 10 um, version of this character looks like. So we get a few things, a couple of ASIs, keeping in mind that rogues do get one more ASI than normal at level 10. So what we're going to do with our level 8 ASI is we're actually going to take another feat. And being a ranged rogue, I'm sure a lot of people are going to probably guess what I'm going after, but sharpshooter. Because basically rolling 3d20, we're still going to have good odds even with the -5 penalty to the attack roll to still hit.
Yep.
And then with our level 10 ASI, what we're going to do is we're going to finally take a brief break from taking a feat, but just to max out our dexterity to 20.
Of course.
So let's take a look at what this does for us. So first off, with our dex finally maxed out at 20, that gives us a 16 armor class with just regular leather armor. Of course, by this time, I would assume that you would probably have some sort of leather armor or something like that, so it's probably going to be better than that. +5 to initiative, that's going to be a very good initiative score. So you're likely to go first and shoot somebody in the back before they have a chance to actually position themselves or what have you. And then also let's take a look at some of the features that you get between in the last couple of levels. So first off, your sneak attack is 5d6. So you're basically on hit doing 66 plus 5 plus 10 from the sharpshooter. So 66 plus 15 points of damage. Where if you take a look at the average damage for that, then you're doing roughly 39 points of damage, give or take, per round on average, which is pretty good.
That's pretty. Yeah, it's excellent if you ask me.
And that's not accounting for any like magic items or the wizard in your party buffing you up or what have you. So also you get on level 7 evasion just to help shore up your defenses just a little bit. So whenever you make a dex saving throw, which is a pretty common saving throw, a lot of spells target dex, a lot of traps target dex, things of that nature. If you fail that save, you only take half. If you succeed, you take no damage. So that's really going to mitigate a lot of the damage you take from those types of attacks.
Yeah.
And then level 9, from being a scout rogue, you basically increase your walking, climbing, and swimming speeds by 10 feet. Well, walking speed by 10 feet, and if you have climbing and swimming speed, they also go up by 10 feet.
Yep.
So basically, we're looking at a 40-foot movement speed. So when we use our skirmisher, we're now going to be able to move 20 feet with our reaction instead of 15, which could make all the difference.
Could make all the difference, exactly.
Yep. And then, of course, another cool thing about the sharpshooter feat is we can now utilize the actual long distance number for a short bow without having an instance of disadvantage. And the other cool thing is that since we're an elf, we also have proficiency in longbows as well, so we can get that D8 points of damage instead of the D6 from the short bow, which is on average 1 more point of damage, but it's still more damage is more damage.
Absolutely, gives you that ability to upgrade if you come across the longbow. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So already we're only halfway through the build and we're doing pretty decent damage.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out before we go to the next level here is that's fine.
Yeah.
Our skills are now at plus 13, where we've got our expertise, right? They don't stop climbing.
And we shall get to those skills during our next level up here, which we'll take a look, just a little bit more of a gap just to see what we got. So level 15. So during this time frame we get a few more things, but only one of those things we actually have to make a choice, which is another ASI at 12th level. So at this level, I know we took sharpshooter, but this is going to be another feat to help ensure that we hit a little bit more often. And so this level we're going to take Fighting Initiate. What this does is allow us to take a fighting style from the fighter, which we're going to take in the archery fighting style for an extra +2 to attack rolls with ranged weapons.
Well, all right then.
So let's take a look at what we have now. So with the archery fighting style, we now have +12 to hit with our attack rolls before the sharpshooter penalty. So after sharpshooter, we're basically rolling 3d20 +7 to hit, which is pretty decent to hit. So normally, when it comes to sharpshooter and great weapon master, you usually want to turn those off once you figure out that the enemy has about an 18 AC. But since you're basically rolling 3d20 +7, that ceiling gets a little bit higher. Now you can start to push that limit up to closer to like 2021 or so before you have to really start to think about, is it worth it to sharpshooter. Taking a look at some of the other stuff that we get. So sneak attack is now 8d6 points of damage on top of everything else that you might be able to do, which is going to be really good. That's sneak attack by itself, that on average is going to be about 32 points of damage just from sneak attack, which is a good chunk of damage.
That's almost the average amount of damage you were doing at level what was it, level 6?
Yep.
Right, and that's just off of your sneak attack. So crazy skill. It can scale really well.
Yes, indeed. Next up on the 11th level, we get Reliable Talent. Care to explain why Reliable Talent is so good on this type of build of Rogue?
Because you can't fail. You just can't fail. It's impossible. You're rolling a minimum on your skills with expertise at 25 at this point. A minimum. It's crazy. I should say the skills that are your acrobatics, your sleight of hand, and your stealth. Obviously, for your ones that the skills that they're using, int and whiz, are a little bit lower, but it's crazy. Reliable talent is insanely good, and you basically can't fail your checks that that you're rolling with your skills that you have in expertise. You just can't fail them.
Yeah. Yeah, as you mentioned, your dex-based expertise skills are +15, and while your int and whiz checks aren't as high as your dex checks, they're still a +11 for those expertise skills, which is a pretty good score to have for an ability check.
That's still amazing, of course.
The next thing we have is on 13th level, Ambush Master. So, basically, what this really does is we have attack rolls against the first creature that we hit during the first round, or actually attack rolls against the first creature we hit during the first round of combat. Our allies basically have advantage on that creature for that first round, so that's going to be good. And considering we're rolling 3d20, chances are really good that we're going to hit.
Yep.
But the main aspect of Ambush Master is you now have advantage on initiative rolls, which at this level you have a +5 already. So you're rolling 2d20 +5.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. So odds are you're probably going to be going before most things. Next up, we also get Blind Sense. So as long as we're able to hear, we're aware of any of the location of any hidden or invisible creatures within 10 feet of us. But I mean, this is a good feature, but its returns are a little bit diminished for us per se because we're going to be more so a ranged attacker.
Yep.
Where I feel like if this was on a melee rogue build, this would be a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then also we get Slippery Mind, so now we have proficiency in Wiz saves. So now our int and Wiz saves are +6 with our Dex save of +10. So it's going to be hard to really take us down in that regard per se.
Yep.
So those are really a lot of the big stuff. So at this point, our damage is looking like, assuming that we're able to get a longbow at some point, we're going to be looking at 1d8 plus 8d6 plus 15 points of damage. So we're looking at approximately 52 points of damage on average.
Amazing. Great scaling. Great scaling.
Yep. And that's assuming that nothing else is coming into play, like no spells from your allies or no magic items, stuff like that.
No extra buffing.
Yeah. So let's take a look at what this character will look like on 20 levels of straight rogue. So we get 2 more ability score improvements. So
let me guess. We're going to take another feat?
Oh, I wonder what gave you that idea. So the feat that we're going to take is the Piercer feat. So you can increase your strength or dex by +1. That doesn't really do much for us at the moment since our dex is already maxed out. But the key features, the key ideas for why we're actually picking up the Piercer feat is once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack which deals piercing damage, which if you can probably guess what a short bow and longbow does, they deal piercing damage. You can re-roll one of the attack's damage die and use the new roll, which, to my knowledge, also extends to your sneak attack dice as well. Mm-hmm. So if you happen to roll like a 1 or 2 on one of those dice, you can just say, all right, I'm going to pick that up and I'm going to re-roll that to have a possibility of doing a little bit more damage with that single die.
Yeah.
Now, keeping in mind, this only affects 1 dice.
Sure.
So you can't re-roll multiple. And the other thing is, if we happen to score a crit or a nat 20 with piercing damage, we can roll 1 additional damage die that's equal to whatever our weapon damage die is. So if we're using a longbow, which probably we are, we're going to be dealing an extra d8 on top of the normal crit natural 20 effects. So instead of 2d8, we're going to be rolling 3d8 with that longbow.
Yep. And as you said earlier, more damage is always good.
Yep. And being that we're rolling 3d20 on our attacks, thanks to Elven Accuracy Advantage, we're going to be seeing a lot more nat 20s than usual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to level 19 for our final ASI, we have a little bit more leeway on what we can do, as we got a lot of stuff that really does basically what we want to do in terms of increasing our DPS and our consistency in the lag.
Mm.
So I think this is a little bit of a free for all type of ASI. You can choose a little bit more variant.
Choose whatever's fitting the character at the point, and wherever you feel you might be a little bit weak. There's no specific build strategy for this one.
Yeah. Yeah. So my the two things that come to my personal mind is either the lucky feat or increasing our wisdom score by +2. So basically, with the lucky feat, it's going to help improve our odds of hitting with our attacks. But with the wisdom score increase, we're going to be increasing our perception, making us a better scout. So those are probably the two things I would think about first. But like we said, it's up to what you wish to do. Knowing myself, even though lucky's a good feat, I would probably want to increase wisdom a tad.
That makes sense.
So let's take a look at what some of the what this build looks like maxed out. So basically, looking at our skills first, we have a +17 to our dex-based skills. So good luck failing any of those skills.
Such silliness.
We have a +14 to perception, which our passive perception is now 24.
Wow.
So we're going to be really seeing a lot of secret doors and stuff like that. Oh, before I continue, one more idea that did come to mind for the level 19 ASI. Another good option is to pick up the alert feat.
Mm.
Not only would you not be able to be surprised, which is good if you're actually scouting, but also you now have +10 to initiative at advantage.
Yeah, that's pretty good too.
Yep. So that actually now I think about it, I would probably choose either the wisdom increase or the alert feat. I think those are probably two better options than lucky, but lucky's still a good option if you want to go that route.
Always a nice backup plan.
Yep. So looking at a lot of stuff. So our sneak attack is now 10d6 per turn of hitting. So that's going to be a lot of damage. So basically 40 points of damage just off a sneak attack. And then also, in addition to that, a little bit later on, we have Sudden Strike. Basically, if we take the attack action on our turn, we can make an additional attack as a bonus action, and it can deal an additional sneak attack, even if we already used it sneak attack this turn, but only if we attack somebody else. So basically, this is actually an interesting feature here in terms of we want to. It kind of messes up our flow just a tad, so we're going to want to keep in mind of what we're actually using our bonus action for. So up until this point, we've been primarily using our bonus action to forego our movement to gain advantage on our next attack that turn. So depending on what we're actually doing, we might use this, but more than likely we'll probably still want our advantage on our attack just to ensure that everything hits. But this is a good backup plan just in case maybe your ally wizard already gave you advantage from like a spell or something like that. Then this would be pretty good. Or if you can somehow get advantage through some other way, then sudden strike would be amazing.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind with this particular rogue.
Yeah, I also like the idea that being a ranged player, you have the ability to shoot two different enemies, right? With your arrows, right? And kind of have that image of a Legolas sort of character, right? Shooting all those arrows out. So I think I like sudden strike as an added feat for this type of rogue. But to your point, right, that you want to be careful with the advantage and maneuvering on the battlefield with it.
Yeah. Then we also gain elusive. So basically, as long as you're not incapacitated, you can no attacks can ever have advantage against you. So that's kind of like a way to help your defenses just a tad. And then you also get stroke of luck. Once per short rest, if your attack misses, you can automatically turn the miss to a hit. Same thing with the ability check. If you happen to fail an ability check, you can treat the roll as a nat 20. So basically, you're probably not going to be missing with your attack rolls because you have such good bonuses with 3d20. But it's still helpful on an attack roll just in case. And the ability checks, you're not going to use those at all for acrobatics, sleight of hand, or stealth. Because let's face it, if a 27 doesn't make it as a minimum with those skills, you have more important things to worry about than trying to succeed. Or
Very true. Very true.
you should probably look at getting the heck out of whatever situation that you and your party are in.
Absolutely.
But I feel like, and at least in terms of the ability check portion of it, I think Stroke of Luck will be used primarily for your non proficient skills. So maybe you're trying to, I don't know, check out Arcana for some odd reason, or maybe you're trying to, maybe nobody's a party face in your group, like there's no bard or paladin or something like that, so you're kind of the pseudo party phase. So maybe you might need to use your Stroke of Luck on a failed persuasion check or failed deception check or something like that. So there's pretty decent uses for that on ability checks.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so let's take a look at what type of damage we're looking at. Assuming that we have a long bow instead of a short bow, we'll be doing not counting for crits. We'll be doing a D8 plus 10d6 plus 15. So an average of 60 points of damage. Now, if we happen to crit, which is a lot more likely on this build, then what we're looking at is 3d8 plus 20d6 plus 15. So on average, what we're going to be looking at is we'll actually be looking at approximately 110 points of damage.
Wow. That's quite a turn for any character you're playing. So
Yep, and so that's actually not bad damage whatsoever.
no, I would classify that as great damage.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like there are definitely builds out there that can do a whole lot more damage than that, but still 110 points of damage, and the only resource you're giving up is one arrow. I think that's pretty good, and that's assuming that you're playing in a campaign where you actually have to keep track of your arrows.
Right. Exactly.
And basically, when it comes to your attack rolls, you're rolling 3d20 plus 8 with your sharpshooter feature turned on.
Yep.
So you're still going to be hitting quite often, because odds are likely you're going to make at least one of those d20s are probably going to be somewhere in the teens or so. So you're probably going to be making it somewhere in the 20s minimum each turn, more than likely.
Yeah, your possibility of connecting with 100 points of damage is much higher than normally.
Because you basically have three chances a turn to get an at 20.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Possibly even more if you happen to have taken the lucky feat with your level 19 ASI.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So all in all, I think so. The whole, as mentioned before, the whole purpose of this character is to one be that party scout, with your bonuses to stealth and perception to be able to go up, sneak around, get the lay of the land, and report back. And then combine that with the fact that you're dealing massive amounts of damage on average each turn, with good consistency.
Yep.
You're a force to be reckoned with in those two regards.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Of course, there are some weaknesses and some stuff that this character isn't so great on, which is probably which I think is what D&D is all about. You can't be excellent at everything, or else that takes the fun away from everybody else.
Yep.
So basically, when it comes to the things that this particular rogue is decent but not super great on, you're not going to be super great on any intelligence based stuff. At best, you're only going to be pretty decent at some, which is just nature, really. Everything else is only okay at best. You're not going to be great at much charisma based stuff, so plus sevens are pretty decent per se, but you're not going to be as good as like a sorcerer or a warlock or something like that.
Yep.
But maybe a good backup in case one of them is in a split the party situation. A weakness is that you're definitely going to suck on any strength base save and check.
Yep.
So with a -1 to strength saves and a -1 to athletics, if there's some strength based thing, you are not the one to do that. Um, but in terms of figuring out traps, scouting, stuff like that, that is you're going to be your party's go-to person for that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the defenses, you have some good defenses in terms of like uncanny dodge, evasion, stuff like that. But you're not going to be on the levels of barbarians or paladins or stuff like that. As you're basically going to have somewhere around a 16, 17 AC,
Yeah.
17 AC with regular studded leather armor. You're only going to have 143 HP, so so two good hits could take you out of the fight.
Yeah. You're a little bit squishy, but I think that's where some of the other feats and skills that we've got, skirmisher and um, like you said, uncanny dodge and stuff like that, evasion would come in really handy with that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that to really keep in mind with this rogue, though, as mentioned before, is you have a few things competing for your reaction and for your bonus action. So you have to be really on top of your P's and Q's when it comes to what do you need to do for that turn. In terms of do you need to uncanny dodge, do you need to skirmisher, or if you have like a battlemaster fighter with the command and strike feature, so definitely keep in mind what you can do with your reaction. And then when it comes to bonus action, do you want to generate your own advantage, or do you want to attack again with your level high level rogue feature and get another sneak attack off? So it's really balancing what does the scenario looks like for that turn and figuring out what do you want to do with your reaction and bonus action.
yep, and then that's a really good point.
Yeah, but what but pretty much that's what I call the Scout Rogue. Um, and I think it's a pretty good build for what it can do. It's really good. What's your thoughts on everything?
Yeah, I think this seems like a pretty interesting and fun build. Um, I think the idea of being able to have a scout ranger is pretty neat. You scout ahead and then you run to the back and shoot everybody once they're alerted. Uh, and you can, I definitely think that this thing can output the damage for sure. Um, a little bit squishy. So depending on your play style, this might not be, that might make you a little uncomfortable. But I think with the skills that are there that we've talked about with the reactions that you can use, you know, it's not on the realm of too squishy, right? You just got to be a little bit careful and pay attention, so that you can use your right reaction at the right time. But this seems like this could be a fun build, and definitely in the right campaign with the scout part. Huge advantage there.
Yeah. And then, of course, so just a little bit of a tidbit of information for the scout portion. So you can scout in urban areas, wetlands, what have you, but your stealth and perception and acrobatics are still good. But if you're scouting out in like the woods or on the beach or whatever, you do have a good nature and survival score ability checks to really help out in terms of those naturey type of checks, just in case you need to do that sort of like tracking type of scouting or something like that. So that's definitely something good to keep in mind as well.
Yep, good point.
Mhm. But all in all, I think this is a fun class, and if you're ever interested in a style of play like this, then I would definitely say give this a check out, and I think you'll have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, that brings us to a close of a deep dive number one, the Scout Rogue. And until next time, keep y'all's lives geeky.
Bye, everybody.